Sitting in front of a camera in the living room of our family home, my grandma Eileen tells me about her life.
I've always been in Liverpool. I've spent 85 and a half years living in Liverpool 9. I've had different addresses in the same area, but they've all been in Liverpool 9.
She tells me about when she started dating my grandpa.
I was running out of excuses. I was just scared to start going out with him because I wasn't sure that I liked him that much.
Not to be deterred, he decided to propose to her on their second date.
Of course I said no. He proposed to me every time we went out after that.
And then a few months later, after a night out on the town...
Now, I don't know whether I had an extra gin and tonic or not, but I was feeling all gay and everything. We were laughing and that, you know. He was joking with me and I was in a happy mood. He proposed to me again at the prom. And I went, he said, yes. I was going, all right, yes.
There's a moral of the story in there somewhere, something about never giving up on chasing the one you love, but it's slightly undercut by the fact that, you know, I probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for my ancestors being a little bit drunk. But hey, maybe that's true of most of us. My conversation with Eileen was full of stories like this, some sweet, some funny, some tragic. I was familiar with a lot of them, but my grandma, being the liberal embellisher that she was, would always have newly minted details to spice up the old classics. She talked to me about what it was like growing up in Liverpool, being evacuated after her house was destroyed in the Blitz in 1941, leaving school to start work at the age of 14 after her father died, getting into amateur dramatics and sharing a rehearsal space with the Beatles, and much more. I learned a lot of new things about her, stories that I'd never heard before. The interview lasted about 2 hours, and conducting it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'd gotten the idea a few months earlier when I came across a video by Philip Bloom, a filmmaker I follow. My Dad was a simple 30-minute interview intercut with photographs and old home movies with some music playing underneath. Arnie, a retired pharmacist, recounted his childhood memories, reflected on his experiences as a father, and detailed his struggle with alcohol dependency and cancer. I must have watched that video a dozen times. I was captivated by Arnie's story. A man who I'd never met, a man who hadn't free soloed El Capitan or escaped from a maximum security prison. An ordinary person who, like my grandma, had led a pretty normal life. Normal does not mean boring. Everyone has a story worth telling. Everyone. In the 6 years after my interview with Eileen, her memory started to deteriorate. In 2020, when it became obvious that she couldn't look after herself in Liverpool, my family decided to move her up to Scotland to be closer to us. I'll never forget how confused she was when we came to pack up her things. She recognized my face, knew my name, but she couldn't tell me how I was related to her. Even in her old age, she'd been sharp as a tack, and it kind of broke my heart to see how confused she'd become. Eventually she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, which didn't really come as a shock. I desperately wanted my grandma to remember her life again, and so I finally got around to editing the interview that I'd recorded 6 years previously. I broke out the scanner, started scanning photographs to lay over the interview footage, even digitally repairing and upscaling old photographs that had been ripped and torn. I researched and discovered the best methods of digitizing our old videotapes and loaded some clips from those into the edit as well. And finally, once I added some music, I was left with a tight and, dare I say, quite professional 30-minute documentary piece. It was a distillation of my grandma's life, a portrait of her as I will always remember her. Sharp, warm, bubbly, and always talking. After I showed the film to my brother, he immediately said what I'd been thinking.
I think everyone should make one of these, you know, for your parents or your grandparents or something. But it does need like a name, like a life reel, like a show reel for your whole life.
And so last year, on her 90th birthday, my family sat down with my grandma and we all watched her life reel together.
Who do you think's 90 today, Mum? I'll give you a clue. It's you.
I'm not 90.
Yes, you are!
I didn't know I was 90.
You are 90 years old today.
90 years old today?
Yeah.
I didn't know I was that old. Did you say it was my birthday today?
Immediately her eyes lit up in recognition. She was nodding and watching attentively, saying, "That's right, yeah, that's right, oh, I remember that."
When we were bombed out in the May Blitz of
I remember
1941.
all these incidents.
So most of the house was destroyed.
She even pointed at the screen and said, "She's saying everything I'm thinking." There aren't many positives to Alzheimer's, but it was nice to see that every time Eileen watched her life reel, it was as though she was watching it for the very first time, reacquainting herself with the memories that marked the progression of her 90 years on planet Earth. A few months later, she passed away. If you've ever talked to a parent or a grandparent about the past and thought, man, we really ought to write this stuff down, here's my advice. Don't. Sit them in front of a camera and interview them on video. Make a life reel. Half of a story is in the telling, and most people aren't natural writers, but everyone can sit down and talk about their life. I'm so glad I had the foresight to sit down with my grandma and interview her, capture her memories while she still had them, and now I'll always have that piece of her. I'll be able to introduce her to my future children, if I'm so lucky. Obsessed with the potential of the life reel, I decided to film an interview with my mum. I was prepared this time, with better lighting and a list of carefully curated questions. We sat down for a few hours and talked about her life. Just like with my grandma, the stories were funny, introspective, and often emotional.
I was getting showered one morning and I felt a lump under my arm. I kind of thought, this needs investigating. I had various tests. It was diagnosed as lymphoma. For the second lot of chemo, it really knocked everything out of you. I suppose it'd be worrying if it does reappear. They'd probably be looking at other types of therapies. You know, hopefully things are improving all the time so that you'd hopefully stand a chance.
You'll be fine. Just a few months after this interview took place, my mum's lymphoma reappeared. She's been on chemo again and undergoing new therapies, and we're hopeful. What I hope to impress upon you in this video is that the best time to do this is now. We never know when memories will start to fade. We never know when health problems will arise, and if there's anything the last 2 years have taught us, it's that we never know how long we have with the people we love. We owe it to them, to ourselves, and to future generations to capture those memories that would otherwise have been lost in time. If you're interested in making a life reel but you don't know where to start, you don't know the first thing about filmmaking or editing, I've set up a website at lifereel.co, the link is in the description. It's an online course that teaches you everything you need to know about making a life reel from start to finish. But beyond that, I hope I've convinced you to go and record an interview with a loved one. You don't even have to edit it into a life reel, but please just conduct the interview. You will not regret it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.